Welcome to an RPG in a Box Basics video. In this video, we're going to take a look at party members. Now, this video is going to cover a wide breadth of things to do with party members, so it's going to be less of a step-by-step guide on how to set them up, and more of an overall video explaining all the things you need to know about party members, adding them, removing them, managing them, what they're used for, what they're not used for, etc., etc. So hopefully there'll be bits and pieces in this video that will help you with the specific element of party members that you're wanting to know about. Okay, so let's start with how do you add party members. So let's quickly set up a scenario where we add a party member. So I've got this NPC on the map at the moment. It's a copy of Sarah instance I've placed on the map, given her the entity ID Sarah1. So what we'll do is we'll go to the dialogue editor, and those are old ones. We'll create a new dialogue, and we'll create a quick scenario where the player says, wants to join my crew, and then the NPC can respond. Sounds fun. And then we'll have a script node that will add them to party. So how do you add a party member? Well, there's a scripting function to do that, and it's called add party member. So if you're in a dialogue, you can just click and drag this. Obviously, if you're using the visual script editor, that will be, let's clear that, it's an old script as well. Let's just create a new one called test for now. If you're using the visual script editor, it will be the add party member node. Okay, and you just drag that in, and it takes two parameters, the character and the member ID, which we'll go over in a second. So, but we're going to do this in a dialogue, so we don't need to worry about the visual script editor. So we're going to add party member after we've spoken to this NPC. So at the end of the dialogue, we're going to have a script node that adds them to the party. So first important thing to know about party members, the two parameters that it takes is the model, the character model, which you wish to add to your party, and then the member ID, which you wish to then assign this instance of the party member. So we want to add Sarah to our party. So I will put Sarah into the model parameter. And then the member ID can be anything as long as it's unique, because it's an identifier. It's how you identify a specific party member. I will just use Sarah1. Now, even though I've given Sarah the entity ID Sarah1, member ID is something completely separate, so you can give them the same member ID if you wish. This is a completely different NPC, and we'll go into this in a minute. But we'll use Sarah1 as the member ID, and we'll click validate and click OK. So let's now save this dialogue, go to the map, select Sarah, and we will assign her the dialogue when we interact with her. And we'll save, and let's go into game and see what happens. So here we are in game. Now, before we interact with Sarah, let's go over something else that's important to know about how party members work. If we bring down the console for a moment, we can print something called party. Now, what is party? Party is a property that exists by standard in RPG in a Box in a game, and it lists everyone who's in the party. So if we press enter, we can see that what comes back is a codex, because that's what party essentially is. It's a database, it's a codex. And currently inside this database, inside this codex, is the player. We can see they've got the member ID player, and then beside that, it says character base Justin, which is my player model, and then the coordinates that I'm currently standing at on the map when I asked it to print. So -2, -1, 0 is my starting position. Obviously, if I move somewhere different and reprint, now it changes the coordinates. Okay, so it's always reflective of where I'm currently standing. Okay, so at the moment, there's only one person in the party, and that's the player. And that is standard. You cannot change that. The player will always start as the only member of the party. Player is always in a party. You can't remove them. So later when we take a look at remove party member, You won't be able to do that to the player. You literally cannot remove the player from the party. They have to be in the party, and it's so important that it's actually locked. You cannot remove them, okay? So just understand, first of all, the player is always in a party, so the party always starts a minimum size of one member, okay? But let's now go talk to Sarah and see what happens. So, want to join my crew? Sounds fun. And then we click off. That should have now run the script that tells Sarah to join our party. Now, notice if I walk away from Sarah, she still stands there. Okay, she's not following us. She's not doing anything like that. So we'll talk about that in a second. But first of all, let's bring down the console again and let's reprint party and let's see what's happened. Now we can see that it's a size of 2. We've got a new member. Not only do we have the player member ID with the player model, but we also have a Sarah1 member ID and the Sarah model, okay? But notice an important difference here. My character has a coordinate. Sarah does not. And that's because what actually happens with party members is it adds a duplicate, okay? When you talk to an NPC on the map and you then add party member, you are not actually adding this NPC to your party. What you are adding is a copy from your character's model list, which is why we use the model name, Sarah, in our dialogue, in our script. This property here, the parameter, Sarah, this is the name of your model. So for example, if I wanted to add a purple slime to my party member list, then instead of Sarah, I would put purple_slime. I would need to type the exact file name into here as I saved my model as, into the first parameter. Then you can call it whatever you want, slime1, purple1, whatever you want to call it, right? But this parameter, the first one, this is the most important in regards to adding which model to add, because it's the reference to the file name, okay? And so what it does is it adds a copy of Sarah. It has nothing to do with the one that you've placed on a map. The one that's on the map is just there to trigger a dialogue, okay? So party members and NPCs that are placed on your map are 2 completely separate systems, and they do not in any way relate to one another. So if you want an NPC to now follow you, Sarah, for example, now that she's in our party, if we want her to now follow us around the map, that is something completely separate. That is not related to party members at all. Party members do not follow you in RPG in a Box. You can make NPCs follow you, but that is a separate topic in and of itself, okay? Party members, as they're referred to in RPG in a Box, are not people that follow you around. They are used very differently. So what are party members actually used for? When do they actually come into play? If they're invisible, if they're just something that's added to a database, where do they actually come into use? Well, let's go back to the editor. Party members come into play in combat, in the combat tab, whether it be let's just add a battle, whether it be a tactical turn-based battle or a menu-driven turn-based battle. These are where your party members, if you've got any, come into play, okay? So I've already got a map that I can use, map 2, as a battle map. It's a exact replica of this map, and I'll explain why in a minute. So if we load it up, you can see it's an exact copy, same tree, Sarah in the same place, okay? And there's a reason why I've set it up like that. So back to the combat tab. Let's also add an enemy. So let's add Slimer, and we'll make it a purple slime model, and we'll say that you get 50 XP for killing it, and then we'll drag and drop that enemy into there, and we'll click save. So here we are in game. So let's first of all interact with Sarah. And now she's been added to our party. Not that specific Sarah, but a copy of Sarah. And if we print party, we can see that she's there in our party roster, but she doesn't have a coordinate. She's not on the map, okay? She's in memory as a party member, but she's not in the real-time map, okay? let's go into battle. Okay, ignore the error. That's something to do with the purple slime asset. So here we are in a battle map, and you'll notice something odd. There are two Sarahs in this map. We've got one with a health bar above her head and one without. And this is why I left Sarah on the map in the map editor. This is to point out that any NPCs that you have on a map in the map editor that's assigned as a battle map will be sort of background characters in the battle. So in other words, she's not involved in the battle. She's just there because she's on the map in the map editor. But what that's meant in this case is we now have two Sarahs, because as I said before, the one we added to our party is a copy of the one we spoke to. So if we wanted to create the illusion that this Sarah is now in our party, we should delete her from the battle map because she's now involved in the battle. So you need to sort of think about, which maps should have an NPC in them and when they shouldn't, because they're in your party. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the video, how you can do things like that. But just understand that because party members are not actually related in any way to NPCs that you place on the map, they are going to coexist, okay? So if you don't want them to coexist, because it breaks the illusion that this Sarah is now in your party, you're going to have to proactively do that yourself. The mechanics of RPG in a Box don't do that for you, because NPCs and party members are two completely separate systems, okay? So, as I said, what are party members? Well, party members are used in battles, whether they be tactical or menu-driven battles. And we're in a tactical battle right now. So, because we can see Sarah on the map, if I reprint the party variable from earlier, now we can see that, unlike before where she didn't have a coordinate, now the Sarah has a coordinate because she's been placed on the map because we're in a battle, and this is where they're used. This is where party members come into play. And essentially what party members are is they're an extra hit to an enemy, and they're also an extra life to the player. In other words, if my player character dies, I can still play as Sarah, so I get another chance to win the battle. Also, I get an extra hit on this slime because once I've hit the slime, Sarah can then hit the slime. So party members are basically an extra hit and an extra life. You can obviously change that if you want with scripting and stuff. So if you want it so that if the player character dies, the main one, then it should be game over and you shouldn't have any more, it shouldn't then jump to a party member. You can obviously set that up in scripting, but by default, party members are an extra life. So even if your character dies, you can still continue to play the battle. And if you win, then you've won the battle and your character comes back in the main overworld. Okay. Anything else I want to cover? Oh, and then obviously, one thing that's important to point out is if I print player is an inbuilt variable, game variable, that points to the player character. Okay. Now, if I print that, it comes back as character base Justin, right? That is my player character. If you go into the game configuration panel and look at the player character setting, I've set it to base Justin, right? So I can walk around as Justin. I'm currently controlling Justin. However, in a tactical turn-based battle, I can end my turn. So let's just go and hit this slime for a second. And now my turn is ended and I'm now controlling Sarah. If I reprint that player property, it now comes back as Sarah. So even though Sarah is a party member, she's not the player. Because I am now directly controlling Sarah, Sarah is now considered the player entity, okay? Not the player character. The character model is still assigned as Justin, but the player entity, i.e. the entity that governs who's playing the game, is now been attributed Sarah, okay? Now, why is that important? Well, if you've got scripts that reference player as a target, then if you're playing as a party member at the time, it's not going to affect your main player character. For example, let's say I had a script that heals player 5 health, right? But I'm currently playing as Sarah. It's not going to heal base Justin. It's going to try and heal Sarah for health of 5, right? Because I'm playing as Sarah at the time. So a script that's triggering player is going to try and heal Sarah. Does that make sense? So how do you heal a specific party member? For example, if I'm playing as Sarah, how do I ensure that my original character is the one that gets healed, not Sarah? Well, for that, you print specifically party.member and then the member ID. Now remember, the player character is in a party by default under the member ID player. So if we print this, we actually get our main character back. So party.member player is a reliable, constant way of referring to our original character. So if we wanted a script that only healed the player alone, then instead of targeting player, you would target party.member player. Okay, so just to explain what I mean by that, if we wanted a script that only healed the player and not any other random party member, instead of doing, let's do it in the Visual Script Editor. Cancel that. If you did heal entity, instead of using this player, because if you're playing currently as party member Sarah, it's going to heal Sarah and not you. But let's say this script should always just heal the player character, not any party members. Then put into here or you could do it this way if you want the more easier way of doing it. Depends how comfortable you are coding. I always assume people are happy to just sit and type the code, but another way you could do the same thing. Sorry, that should be player. And let's say it heals for 5. Another way of doing the same thing, let's put this back. So this was player. If you want to do it by using the interface, click this and select party member and put player into here. Okay. As long as that's set to party.member player, this will always heal only the player character, it won't change based on who you're playing as. It will always be you, the character that you've set in your, player character. Party.member player will always refer to this character. But player, this one, depends on who you're controlling at the time. So if this script is run at a time where you're not controlling this character, then this character won't be the one that's healed. Does that make sense? So hopefully I've gone over that enough that should be clear. But it's important distinction to understand with party members. How do you actually reliably refer to the player when it's changing? Okay. And there's another reason why that's important, why that comes into play. If we run the game again and we just quickly add Sarah to our party one more time. Okay, let's print party again. So we can see character Sarah 1 in our party, but we can't see her. She's not on screen because we're not in a battle map. But what you can do with party members is you can switch to them. So we can use a command. Again, you can put these in, all of these commands I'm typing, you can put into the Visual Script Editor. But we can use a command called change player. And what that does is that allows you to pass in a party member. So we can say party member Sarah 1. And now, because Sarah is in our party, as soon as I press enter, I now become that party member. Okay. And I would have all of her equipment. I'd have all of her inventory, her stats, everything. I literally become that character, right? Now, how do you change back? Because if I change player to try and go back to the original player, that's not going to work because the specified character is already the current player character. Because as I said, player is now Sarah. So I'm trying to change back to Sarah, but I'm already Sarah. That's not what I want to do anyway. I want to change back to my main player character. So that's why when you change to different party members, if you want to go back to your original character, you must use that reference that's always the same, which is party member player. And now I go back to being my player character, okay? So A, that's another thing that you can do with party members, which is you can switch to them. And B, that's another reason why you need to use party member player rather than the player variable, because the player variable is dynamic, whereas the party member player reference is static and will always point to your player character. So if you always want to know where your character is, use party member player. Okay. So we've now added Sarah to our party, and we've seen that she can be used in battles as an extra life and also as an extra hit for enemies. So what else can we do with party members? So we can give them skills. So if you go to the stats tab, I've got a skill here. First of all, when you have skills, you can target different things. So self, let's say we have a healing skill that heals 5. Self is who are you controlling at the moment. So if I'm controlling base Justin at the time when I run this skill, it's going to heal me for 5. Okay. If I'm playing as Sarah, party member Sarah, at the time that I run this skill or trigger this skill, it's going to heal Sarah for 5. That's because I'm playing as Sarah. So this is a bit like pointing to the player variable like we were doing earlier. Self is just who is this applicable to at the time of its being executed. Okay. Next we have party. If you have party as a target for a skill, that basically means everyone at once. So everyone who's in your party all get healed for 5 health. So even if they don't need healing, they'll get 5 health anyway. They won't go over the max, but it just won't do anything. But if anyone in your party needs healing, they will all get healed the moment this skill is triggered. And then party member allows you as the player, or whoever's controlling whichever character you are controlling at the time, when this skill is triggered, it then allows you to click on a party member. And I believe you could even click on yourself if you wanted to, but your cursor will change into a crosshair, and you can then click on a party member on the battle map, and it will then heal that specific party member. Now, it's important to remember that because party members are not visible outside battles, you're going to have very limited use of skills that target either party or party member in a real-time map, because you're not going to be able to click on them. They're not there to click on, right? You might still be able to get away with a party target, because that might behind the scenes heal them off screen, but you certainly wouldn't be able to use party member because you want you to click on them, but they're not there to click on. So just understand that some of these skills are not going to be applicable outside of combat when it relates to party members, because party members themselves aren't that applicable outside of combat. Okay. So that's skills. And then obviously you can give a skill to a party member by when you give skills, let's find the script editor. Let's get rid of that. And let's find the give skill command. The character, you would put party member. So if I wanted Sarah 1 to have this skill, I would put that in there like that. And then that gives it to party member Sarah 1. And now she has that skill that heals for 5. Okay. And when you're in tactical turn-based battles, as long as you have the skill bar on so you can see it, then when it's Sarah's turn, you'll be able to use that skill. So understand that another thing that's worth pointing out, should be obvious, but I'll say it anyway, party members don't have autonomous AI. So when you play in tactical turn-based battles or menu-driven battles, you always make the decisions for the party members. You control them. They don't do anything for themselves. The enemies will move around and attack at will, but your party members are just extra players. So once you've done your turn, you then play as Sarah and you do the things for her. And then if you had another party member, it then goes to Stumpy, for example. You then control Stumpy. So there's never a moment where party members think for themselves. So you're going to have to be the one that triggers skills on party members and things like that if you give them skills. But I'm sure you knew that anyway, but it's just worth, pointing these things out. So let's just put that back for a moment. Next, what should we talk about next? How do you remove a party member? So I've just added Sarah back to the party. So let's print party again one more time. I know it's a bit redundant to keep doing it, but it's just nice to see where we're at. So we can see Sarah 1 is in our party, okay? How do you remove Sarah from your party? Let's say we want to bench her for a moment, so we're just on our own, or we want to have a different party member come in. Maybe we want to have Sarah 1 sit to one side for a moment while we go on an adventure with Stumpy or something like that. How do you remove Sarah from your party? Well, it's a very simple command, and again, you'd find this in the script editor, but I'm going to just do it in game for now so we can see it happening. Remove party member is the command that you would use in a script to remove the party member. And it takes a single parameter, and it's just the member ID. So in this case, Sarah 1, whichever name you used when you added them as a unique identifier. So in this case, Sarah 1. As soon as I do that, and if I reprint the party, we can see that she's gone from our party, okay? Now, what's good to know about remove party member is while it removes them from the party, it doesn't actually delete them as a party member. They are still in memory of the game as a party member, but they're just not in our party. So because of that, we can use a third command. So we've got add party member, we've got remove party member, but there's a third one, which is restore party member. And this takes the same parameter as remove, which is the name that we'd added them to in the first place. So what this will do is it will find the one that we've benched and put them back into our party. So now if I reprint party, Sarah 1 is back in our party. And that will save her equipment, her inventory, so you won't have to reset up a party number. Just use remove. It won't delete them. It will just bench them so they're not in your party, but it will keep them with their inventory, their stats, their equipment, and all of that. And then when you restore them, they'll come back into your party with all of that stuff, right? So understand that this is a really important distinction to make if you're, starting out with party members. Add party member you should only ever use once per NPC. So, for instance, if this is the first time I'm adding Sarah as a party member, then I use add party member. This is essentially saying create a party member. This should almost be called create. But it also adds at the same time. But essentially what it's just doing is this is creating a party member called Sarah, okay? When we remove, obviously, if our intention is to just bench them, we don't actually get rid of them. We just don't want them in our party right now because maybe we're building a different party, right? We don't want to delete them, okay? So what remove does is it doesn't actually remove them, it benches them, okay? So restore is then how you unbench them, say you're welcome in the team again, right? So the workflow is basically going to be you're going to add to initially add them. And then during your game, when you're toggling them in and out of your party, the only commands you should be using are these two, remove and restore, okay? These are the ones, let me just put them in brackets. These are the ones that you would then use to subsequently manage all your party members. You should never be doing subsequent adds for the same NPC, okay? Let me explain why this is a problem if you do. There are currently no guardrails to this mechanic, and you could potentially lose a character, okay? I'll explain why that will happen in a minute. But I have spoken to Justin about this, and he's agreed that, it needs to be addressed, and he's going to add some guardrails in so that, you can't accidentally put yourself in a position where you could lose a character. Let's go over why this is an issue. If I print party for a second, we can see that we've got a character called Sarah 1, which is the model Sarah, okay? If I remove Sarah 1 from my roster, but not from memory, so Sarah 1, so I've just benched Sarah. She still exists, but I've benched her, okay? So if we print party, she's not in it, okay? but she still exists in the game world. She's still got, all of her equipment, all of her money, all of her inventory, all of her stats, all of her properties. Let's say she's a character we really like, but we just don't want to go on an adventure with that character right now. We're going to come back and add her later, restore her back into the party later. That's fine. But what if we have a script purely by accident, just oversight in game development, where we add party member Stumpy, but we accidentally put Stumpy into Sarah 1 slot. The game currently does not stop you, does not block that. And that's what I mean by there's no guardrails. Because now we've got a situation where if I print the party property, we've got a Sarah 1 member ID, but now there's a different character assigned to that member ID. And that's a problem for multiple reasons. Let's go over the first one. We've got a Sarah in memory at the moment, a benched character, which we can restore. So let's restore party member Sarah 1. Remember, this Sarah's got loads of equipment and loads of inventory and loads of stats and stuff. She's one of our favorite characters. We can't restore Sarah 1. Why? Because a character is already taking up that name in our party. Okay, let's remove Stumpy then. So we free up that slot. Let's remove Sarah 1. Right, Stumpy's now no longer in our party. Right, now we can restore our original saved NPC. Great. Let's print party to confirm. No, that's just restored Stumpy. Because when you remove Stumpy, it overwrote the one that was benched. Because we've benched Stumpy, who's got the same slot name, and therefore we've overwritten the slot name of the character that's benched. So what we've now done is we've completely wiped Sarah. We couldn't restore her when she was benched, and now we've removed Stumpy in order to bring her back. We've now overwritten Sarah. So now we've completely lost that NPC with all the equipment, with all the stats, with all the properties. That character you've been working up for hours, gone. So I pointed this out to Justin, and he agrees that there absolutely needs to be handrails built onto this mechanic. So what's going to most likely be implemented is the add party member command, this one, the most devastating of them all, because it's the one that causes the damage. If we try to add Stumpy to Sarah 1, even though this name doesn't currently exist in our party, it will also, in future, check if there's one benched with the same name. And if there is a character benched with the same name, it will block this. So you won't be able to, in future, be able to add another NPC to a slot you've already previously used and therefore have a character in memory that you're trying to hold on to. Okay. Currently, there's no guardrails, which is why I'm pointing it out, because it's important to know I don't want anyone to lose any characters by accidentally overriding an NPC that they've removed, and therefore the slots available. Don't be using this if you don't need to, if your aim is actually just to restore. Okay, use the restore for removed characters if that's what you're doing, and just make sure you don't add anyone over a slot that's in memory. Okay, because it will be available. The add command won't block it, but obviously, really, it's not available because it's a character you're trying to keep in memory to restore later. Okay. So I know that was quite a bit of time spent talking about a bug, but it's important to really point out because if you accidentally do it, it's gonna be horrible. You're gonna lose a lot of work. So I'll just point it out just so people are aware of it. But that's how you remove and restore party members, is by the slot ID. Okay. Somebody also wanted to know, how do you get the size of a party, whether it be just to see how big the party currently is, or whether it's to limit the size of a party. Well, there's a function you can use for that called len, which counts the size of something. So if we print, so we can see the result, and we put within the len party, it will return 2. Because if we print party again, we can see there's 2. There's the player and Sarah 1. So currently party has 2 entries in it. Okay, len counts the amount of entries in a database, or it counts the length of a string, that kind of how many characters, that sort of thing. It just tells you the size of something. So in this case, if we point it at party, it's going to tell us how many entries there are. So in this case, how many people are in the party. Now, remember that the player is always by default in the party property. So if we want to know specifically how many extra NPCs are there, i.e. not the player, then what you can do is you can do len party -1. So just deduct the player from the calculation, and that will give you how many NPCs do you have in your party. So for example, if I add party member Justin as Justin1, and now I print party -1, it should say 2, because I have two NPCs. But if I just print party, there's a total of 3. And if we have a look at the party, sure enough, there's 1, 2, 3 entries. Okay. So if you wanted a script to restrict how many party members you can have, you would simply have a script that checks the length of the party. So if len party -1, so let's just count how many NPCs we have, is less than 3, then print you can add another, else print too many party members. End. Okay, so I can add another currently because the amount of my party -1 is less than 3. And if we print that, it's 2. Okay, so if I add another one, slime, it's going to be purple slime, isn't it? Purple slime. What do I call it? Slimer, let's say. That's now put the number at 3, but because we're looking for less than 3, now this should actually tell us we've got too many. So if we tried now to add another party member, but we had the if checking it first, now it will come back and say too many party members. Now I'm just using print here, but obviously what you would probably do is if it's less than 3, then add party member, else display message, you cannot add any more party members, or whatever you want to do. But that's how you would limit the size or check the size of your party. You don't have to do -1 if you want to include the player in the count, but if you just want to count how many NPCs are in your party and limit that, then you can -1 to just take the player out of the count. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. That's how you've just put this code in a script, and then, in a dialogue or whatever, when you talk to an NPC, just have it check your size of the party first before you then add them. Otherwise, if it's over the size, then, have a message pop up or whatever happens to tell the player, they need to drop someone first, Other things we can do with the party variable, we can print specific, because it's a codex, obviously we can also do this, party member Slimer, and we can get, that we can return that particular character. But because it's a codex, we can also use the shortcut, which is we don't have to do .member. We can also just do party and then brackets Slimer, and that will also return the same thing. Okay, it's just a different way of getting to the same information. Because party is a codex, you can also treat it like a codex. So another thing that we can do, because it's a codex, is we can loop through. Sorry if this is a bit more advanced. This is just to show you the sort of things you can do with the party variable. This name can be anything. So the control variable, which is what this can be called anything. Has to start with $, but we can call it, anything. But we're going to loop through the party property. So for everything in party, do, and then we can print the control variable as we loop through. So print anything and then end. And you'll see that what this does is this returns us all of the IDs. So Claire, Sarah1, Justin1, Slimer, all the member IDs. So if you wanted to loop through your party roster and check who's in there or check if you've got a certain character, then you can do that. So for example, we could say, let's see if Slimer's in our party. So for everything or anything in party, do, and then if $anything is equal to Slimer, then print Slimer is on the team. And then end both the if and the for loop. And now it knows that Slimer is on the team because it found, as it was looping through all these IDs, it found Slimer, okay? But if I search for one that doesn't exist, so Bob, then print Bob is on the team, else print who's Bob. And we get who's Bob. Now, you do get it 4 times because basically it went through all of them, said that's not Bob, that's not Bob, that's not Bob, that's not Bob. So it did do it 4 times. What you could do is instead of printing it for every loop, print it at the end of the loop, right? So this is getting a bit technical, but I will just, you're probably wanting to know how to do that. So let me just show you. So for everything in party do, if, in fact, let's just rerun the whole thing. If anything equals Bob, then $found equals true. Else $found equals false. And then we end the if and the for loop, and then you start a whole new if at the end that says if $found is equal to true, then it found Bob. So print Bob is on the team. Else print who's Bob. End. And now you just get it once, because for all of them it's just checking them, and then if it ever finds it, then found is true. If it doesn't find it, then it should be false. And then we check at the end of it all, if it was true, if it ever found it, then print Bob's on the team, otherwise print who's Bob. That's how you get it to do it just once and not do it for every single character that's in your party. What you would also need to do, which I forgot to do, is when it does find it, you should also break out of the loop. Otherwise, it will continue on and then not find it and set it to false, right? So if for example, your third character is Bob, it will find him and set it to true, but then the next one won't be Bob, so it will set it to false. So this will just mean that when it finds it, we stop the loop because we found it, and so now tell us whether you found it or not, right? This is a bit technical, but for those that are coders, hopefully that's, useful to you. So those are the sort of things you can do with the party variable, okay? How to count it, how to loop through who's in it, how to do specific things for different characters. So you just check if the current member ID as it loops through is a certain ID. So for example, in our battle map earlier, when we were in a tactical turn-based battle, let's just load that up for a minute. We have this tactical turn-based battle map, right? Where I said that if you load this map, it could have a duplicate because, we might have this Sarah in our party at the time when we enter this battle. So we don't want her standing here. If that's the case, then what you can do is when we load this battle map, you can have a post load script that checks our party. So for everything in party do, if everything equals Sarah1, then remove this model. Otherwise, don't do anything. So that way, if we enter this battle with a party member of Sarah, it deletes the Sarah that's on the map, right? That way it creates the illusion that this Sarah has joined our team. So you're going to have to start doing things like that. As I say, this is what I mean when I said earlier that the NPCs and party members don't work together. They're not a synchronous system. You're going to have to script a lot of that yourself. You're going to have to come up with mechanics for, should this NPC be on the map at this point in time if they're in your party, and all that kind of stuff. Okay. Now, I'm not going to cover in this video, because it's a topic in and of itself. Trust me, it is a topic in and of itself. How to get NPCs to follow you and therefore give the illusion that they're party members, because as I said, they're completely separate systems. But I will cover in my subsequent video the topic of getting NPCs to follow you around. But remember, they are not party members. They are just the illusion of party members. You're faking it. I believe, oh no, there is one more thing to talk about with party members. Sorry, let's now one more time go into game to demonstrate this. Let's just quickly add Sarah to our party. Okay, so managing your equipment and inventory of party members. This is very important to discuss. There's some things that you need to know about how this works. So if I press the I key on my keyboard, it toggles my player inventory. So this is my player character's inventory that's currently on screen. If I give an item to my party member, so let's give item, and I made one earlier, which is a sword, which is item 001. Let's give one sword to party.member Sarah1. Okay, if I now show my inventory with the I key, we don't see a sword. And that makes sense. I don't have it. I gave it to Sarah, not me, right? So how do I see Sarah's inventory? Well, one way would be to change player and actually become Sarah, because I would then gain her inventory. So now when I press I, it's her widget, because I assigned her a different widget for pointing out how they're two different inventories. But also I have her sword, right? However, maybe you don't want to change, maybe you don't want to have a mechanic where you keep having to change party member in order to manage their equipment and inventory. So let's change back for a minute. Okay, so I'm back in a situation where I'm accessing my inventory, but I want to access Sarah's. Well, we also have a command that we can use called show inventory. Okay. Now, if you run it by default, it will show yours, whoever you're playing as at the moment. So if I run that, it's the same as basically pressing the I key. When you press the I key, what it's actually doing behind the scenes is it's running this command, show inventory. Okay. But in a script, what you can do is you can actually specify within the brackets whose inventory we want to look at. So we can actually say, show me specifically Sarah's. And up comes Sarah's inventory. Even though I'm playing as Justin, base Justin, I can see Sarah's inventory. Okay. I can also show equipment. Either for myself if I leave it empty, or for Sarah if I fill in party member Sarah1. And now I see Sarah's equipment. Okay. And I could, if I wanted to, if I'd set it up, I could then equip her with the sword. Okay. However, one thing that you need to know, unfortunately, about the way this currently works, and I hope it changes, but just understand this is how it currently works. If I try to show Sarah's inventory, which I'm doing, and then I want to show mine alongside it, I can't. It closes hers and opens mine. You can only currently have one inventory on screen at the same time. So if you had, ideas in your mind of making a game where you can just drag and drop from your inventory to their inventory, as handy as that would be, currently that mechanic isn't in RPG in a Box. Hopefully it will be added, because obviously I get that that's much more user-friendly and intuitive than we currently have to deal with. But currently we can't do it that way. So just understand, if you're looking to do that, it won't work that way right now. The moment I open another inventory to try and open it alongside, it closes one to open the other. And the reason is because it overrides the whole management screen. So I can't even have my equipment open and their inventory, and vice versa. If I have my equipment open, you'll notice that it closes her inventory. Right? So it's now showing my equipment, because you see my model, but it's also showing my inventory. So I can't even equip her sword, right? So how do you then trade items or anything like that? There's two ways. Both are not particularly intuitive, but I point them out to you just so you know they exist, okay? We can show inventory Sarah. Let's say we want her sword, okay? One way is to click the sword so that we're holding it, then close the inventory, okay? Now, even though the cursor's changed, we do actually still have the sword in our possession. We still, it's still selected. Now we can show our inventory and click on one of the squares and it drops the sword. So we did take it from Sarah and put it in our inventory, but we had to close one inventory first, open the other one. It was still in our possession. We still had hold of it, so we could then click it to drop it. As I say, it's not intuitive because you wouldn't know you've still got it because the cursor changes. Once you close the inventory, let's give it back to Sarah. Once you close the inventory, it's gone. So you don't think you've got it, but actually you do still have it. So once we show Sarah's widget, we can click on one of her squares and give it back to her, right? The other way that you can do it is you can just click, let's say we want to give ourselves Sarah's sword. We can click the sword from Sarah's inventory and just drop it, just click off. And when we close her inventory, the sword is now on the world. So now our player can pick it up. And that's another way that you can trade items. Obviously, I get it. In an ideal world, we should have her inventory open over here so we can just click and drag things much easier. And hopefully that will get added because obviously that's more useful. But just right now, show inventory is a single inventory per request. So it just doesn't work like that right now. I'm sure Justin will change it so you can have multiple inventories open at once. It's just right now, that's not how it works. So you kind of have to work around it. The other way would be to just use scripts, and use give item to give either yourself or an NPC an item you want them to have. And then obviously use remove item to remove the one that you've given them from your inventory or vice versa, right? It's a bit more complicated, but if you want to, put buttons on your inventory to transfer items and stuff, that's how you would do it. You'd have scripts on those buttons that both give the item to the person you want to have, but at the same time also then remove the item from your inventory because you've given it to them, right? It's clunky. It's none of these methods are as ideal as dragging and dropping, but it is what it is. You can't do that right now. So it's just important to know that so there's no illusions of what you can achieve, before you attempt it, okay? But in regards to equipping party members, once they've got their inventory, once things are in their inventory, it's actually really easy because once you show their equipment panel, once we show their equipment panel and their inventory, if they've got the sword, you can just click and drag to their, because this is their equipment and their inventory. So you don't have to switch to them to equip them and stuff. You can do that while still being your main character, but you just can't give them items, okay? That's the only thing that right now you can't do. You can't trade items by dragging and dropping between inventories, okay? So hopefully that's answered most, if not all, of the questions relating to the things that you can do with party members. If I've missed anything or if there's still questions you have about a particular aspect, do feel free to ask on the Discord and I will be more than happy to go into any detail on them or explain something I've missed. But for now, that will wrap up this video. As I say, the next one I will discuss how to actually get NPCs to follow you around the map. That's actually very simple to do, but it's not as simple as that because you have to take into consideration the other maps. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. That's why I'm going to cover it in its own topic because, it's not, I can't cover it in 5 minutes. It's just, it will leave you with problems that you then need to solve. So we'll cover that in the next video. But for now, that's pretty much all there is to know about party members. Oh, well, I should point this out. In tactical turn-based battles, your characters gain XP automatically as long as you're playing as them. So for example, Sarah, if you're controlling her and she kills the slime and the slime gives 50 XP, Sarah gets the 50 XP. So that's how you get your party members to have XP, is just have them be the ones that, kill the enemy or whatever gives the XP, have your party member be the one that does it. If you want to force a party member to have XP, you can do it via scripting. You just reference the party member, so Sarah1, for example, and then .stat, and then the stat name, so whether it's XP, currency, health, whatever it is, HP, and then you just do plus equals, and then how much you want it to go up by. So 200, right? Sarah would essentially have leveled up. If we print, in fact, let's do it this way. We print that, but without setting it. We can see she's got 200. So she got the XP, okay? So that's how you can give characters stats if you need party member stats. You refer to the party member by party.member their ID, then .stat, the stat you want to change, and then whether you want it to go up, plus equals, or down, minus equals, or set it equals, and it will be specifically 200 rather than go up 200. So hopefully that gives you all the information you need to know now to set up party members for your games. So with that said, that'll wrap up this video. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next tutorial.